Today we have a proclamation recognizing our great Board of Elections workers. And I'm joined by Councilmember Navarro, who chairs our Government Operations and Fiscal Policy Committee. We also have Councilmember Katz as well, who's on that Government Operations and Fiscal Policy Committee and is the chair of jurisdiction of the committee. Certainly all of the accolades that I have are certainly echoed and superseded by the great support that Government Operations and Fiscal Policy has continued to put forth for our Board of Elections. Let me just say this, that, the election of 2020 was unprecedented in so many ways. When you think about the COVID-19 pandemic that was upon us, when we think about civil rights unrest that was here embedded in our community, we had the scrutiny of election canvassing and the elections themselves, the election workers. And so everyone was fearful of what the impact would be on our election system. And throughout that all, our election system ended up incredibly strong. We saw an incredible turnout from our voters, and it was truly because of the great work of our Board of Elections. And so today is an opportunity to thank them for their great work in protecting our citizenry right to vote. It is something that we fought for as a country for a very long time. Many of us who were enslaved at some point fought for the right to be able to vote. And so to see this protected by the workers, to see that folks were championing ways in which we could ensure that folks who were invalid and sick and shut in would still be connected to the ballot box, understanding what it meant for them, understanding how many seniors were trying to struggle to be able to get to vote, setting up a mail-in system that would allow for folks who were at home and who were immunocompromised to be able to make sure that their voice was heard. All of these things happened. So today, joining us, we have representing the hundreds of staff and volunteers, Boris Brakovich, our Voter Services Division Chief, Bobby Payne, our Vote by Mail Specialist, Michelle Gonda, Vote by Mail Coordinator, Janet Ross, Information Technology Division Chief, Christine Rizet, who's our Operations Division Chief, Deborah Hamer, Election Judge Recruiting Coordinator, Julia Douglas, Lead Trainer, Gilbert Zelaya, our Public Information Officer and Twitter superstar, Allison McGoughlin, our Deputy Director, Margaret Jurgensen, our Election Director, James Shallett, our Board of Elections, President. And then we also have, I know, David Naiman, who's on as well, who is the Board of Elections Secretary. Let me just say that I really, really, really can't thank each of these members enough. You see them on the screen. All of those people are the ones who stood up this election process for you. And so, as Councilmember Duando often says, for the millions that are watching at home, I want you to see these names that are on this screen because they represent democracy. They represent us ensuring that folks continue to have the right to vote. Keep in mind, there were a lot of things that were challenged with our Board of Elections. The date of the primary election changed. Let's remember that. State directives changed about how voters automatically receive vote by mail ballots, but in-person voting centers were also open at the same time. Then the state directives changed for the general election, and voters had to request vote by mail ballots, and along with electronically submitting those ballots, which required hand entry by our election workers. Our local voting centers were eliminated in favor of 11 early voting centers and 40 election day vote centers, and each of them was required to have on hand about 200 and I think it was a little over 250 different kinds of ballots collected throughout the day. So just imagine all the work, all the technology that had to work and function. So just sit here and think about how you're trying to manage your Zoom call and how folks are getting shut out and cut off. And here we have an election process, and all of these folks stood up, all of these things that were happening, and made it work for our community. We had a political situation where, unfortunately, we had a commander-in-chief who was, spawning a lot of conspiracy theories about our election system. And yet, our election workers bravely, here in Montgomery County and across this nation, continue to do their work. This year, we had record numbers of people voting, and everyone's vote was counted. The dedication and commitment by our election workers is to be commended, because you ensured that democracy here in Montgomery County, here in the state of Maryland, and here in this nation continued. And for that, we say thank you. Now I want to turn it to our Government Operations and Fiscal Policy Chair, Nancy Navarro, for comments as well.
Thank you so much, dear colleague. I have to say that a part of me is not totally surprised, because I've had the honor of chairing the Government Operations and Fiscal Policy Committee since 2011. And, we've had our challenges. We have worked very closely, the Board of Elections and the committee, to identify ways to enhance and strengthen their capacity. And I have to say that it is such an extraordinary thing to see how the members of the board, how the staff at the Board of Elections, how our own residents step up to be judges, how young people get involved. And I think that in many ways, in this unprecedented time, all of that energy, all of that dedication, that commitment to make sure that democracy indeed continues to be strengthened and continues to be elevated, all of that came together during this unprecedented time. Everywhere you look, of course, we use that term, unprecedented, because it is. And there is no doubt that this past election was one of those seminal moments here in our county. So I do want to express my utmost appreciation. I am always in awe of the different ways in which everybody steps up. And in this particular time, we also had staff from the Department of Recreation, of Community Partnerships, of other departments. Everybody came together. And let's not forget that there's also a lot of work that has to be done to ensure that all of our community is informed. And of course, I always have to shout out Gilberto Zelaya, Dr. Z, because we saw each other a lot during so many different forums and so many different conversations. And I think he has mastered this notion of community engagement, because it's not just engagement with the Spanish-speaking community, is really engagement at all levels with our young people, with our senior citizens. It doesn't matter. There is this sense of, I think, ownership when it comes to this notion of voting, of democracy. And I think more than anything, perhaps, because we did have to go through some unfortunate experiences that I think in many ways raised or put the spotlight on how fragile democracy actually is. It gave everybody another sense of, and another boost to step up and do whatever they could. So this was an extraordinary team effort, an extraordinary feat. I think Councilmember Rice did cite some of the statistics and the incredible circumstances. And so for that, again, I thank you. I personally want to thank all of you for always, as I said, every year when we go through our briefings, when we go through our budget process, always recognizing that it is so important to continue to strengthen the Board of Elections in any way possible. So again, thank you, gracias. Once again, Montgomery County demonstrated that whenever there's a challenge, we always step up collectively.
Well, thank you, Councilmember Navarro. And let me just say again that your point about making sure that our Board of Elections is well resourced is one that you've been championing since I've known you on this council. And you've continued to make sure that that point was heard. And I think that it set us up well to be able to react to something like this. So I want to thank you and your members of the Government Operations and Fiscal Policy Committee, because if it were not for your work in terms of supporting the Board of Elections, I fear that we may not have been as prepared as we were to address the challenges and situations that we found ourselves in. So thank you to you, ma'am, for all of the great work that you've done. Let me turn to Councilmember Katz very quickly. Councilmember, if you had anything to add before I turn to Ms. Jurgensen to give some remarks on behalf of the election system.
Thank you very much. Both of you have said it extremely well. My two words are thank you, because that's exactly what each voter in Montgomery County and beyond should be saying to every person that put this election on. This one was not one that we could have ever planned in the beginning, but this is certainly one that we're all very proud of at the end. And with that, I will turn it back to you. Thank you very much.
Well, thank you very much. And I did want to acknowledge that Mr. Banoff and Ms. Barnes also here as well. Thank you very much for your tireless efforts as well. Ms. Jurgensen, you've heard a lot. The floor is yours, ma'am.
Thank you, Councilmember Rice and members of the County Council, for this recognition. Elections involve thousands of moving parts and people who must come together and function as one unit to conduct an election. Yes, the 2020 presidential election was one for the history books. Buffeted by uncertainty over the election would it be by mail, in person, a hybrid? The staff of the Montgomery County Board of Elections planned simultaneously for 3 different kinds of elections. Yet the staff navigated winds of change, implemented new options for the voters, and conducted a seamless election with turnout that approached record levels. Ballots must be physically secured and voting equipment cannot be connected to the internet, which means almost all of our staff could not telework and had to put themselves at physical risk to perform their duties. All year, the staff met the challenge. It takes a village was never a truer statement, as many additional county employees and members of the community contributed to our success. Too many to mention. We crashed out of silo thinking to make this truly an unprecedented election a success. Since I can't thank everyone today, though, I would like to acknowledge the leaders of our team who are here. Voter services is the foundation of the election process. Updating voter information and fulfilling the requests is a major task during any presidential election. But in 2020, at times our staff felt they had been hit by a tsunami of paper. Still, they successfully sent, received, and canvassed record numbers of voter registrations, vote by mail, and provisional ballots. Thank you, Boris, Bobby, Lolita, and Michelle, for your leadership. Every day, it seemed like the job of the IT division became more complex and challenging as they met the needs of the election with thousands of pieces of equipment that needed testing, logic and accuracy testing, functionality testing, communication devices that needed to function. Our training program is part of IT and was completely reimagined to train thousands of election judges, our citizens and voters, to be primarily online with the hands-on training in socially distant spaces. The county helped us meet that need. Interest in serving as election judge was overwhelming with many younger voters, and our community stepped up to fill that order and to fill the risk that had been created by many of our older workers having to leave to preserve their own health. Thank you, Janet, and your valuable team for their service. Election operations managed logistics that we could have never, ever imagined existed. Supplying every polling place with the necessary equipment, ballot supplies took on a new dimension with the use of vote centers on election day. 1.75 million ballots were printed to prevent any shortage of any voting at any voting location or any precinct anywhere in the county because of the advent of a precinct-based ballot. Tasks that are always intricate, such as proofing multilingual ballots, increased in complexity with this introduction of precinct-based ballot. Additionally, our operations staff coordinated with county and state officials to make sure that we had the resources necessary for a safe election countywide by using the PPP equipment and other necessary resources for not only this site, but all of our voting sites. The election judge recruiters are part of our operations team, faced a lot of uncertainty and adapted to it, inventively using new resources to recruit a lot of new voters to serve as election judges. An impressive outreach campaign leveraged with the support of several county departments and partnered with numerous far-flung organizations to reach voters and potential election judges with digital tools, including but going well beyond just Zoom. Staffing the polls required a multi-talented wizard on our team in this age of little direct physical contact. Deborah and Dr. Z, thank you. Also, I want to say how proud I am of the administrative staff who worked with me through the many complex, multifaceted challenges due to the uncertainty of the COVID virus. The team worked with fluidity and flexibility, addressing issues as they came up. I'm proud of all the team and their partners, including the employees of many other departments who joined us in this ever adapting, changing circumstances and directions throughout the year. Thank you, Lisa, Kara, and Deputy Director Allison McLaughlin. And finally, I wish to give a special thanks to Jim Shalek, who was supportive of the staff throughout this entire process. And he and I and our board attorney spent a lot of time on the phone working through many, many complexities. And to the council and the county executive, thank you.
Well, thank you very much, Ms. Jurgensen. And you teed up perfectly for our Board of Elections President, Mr. Shalek, if you have a few words to say before we read the proclamation.
Well, thank you, Councilman. And I want to thank all of the council for their support over the years. You've given us the financial resources we need. You've given us the manpower we need. So I just want to thank the council for all their support and for doing this today. It's a wonderful gesture. I'm so proud to work with Margaret and the staff. They do a great job year round. So thank you, council, and Margaret, thank you. And as Sidney Katz says, there's only two words. Thank you all. Thank you.
Well, thank you very much. And thank you to all of those employees who made it happen. Chair Navarro, we're going to go ahead and read the proclamation. I'll start off. Whereas the 2020 election saw unprecedented disruptions and unique challenges due to the COVID-19 pandemic, which required staff to revise plans numerous times, remotely recruit and train workers, implement voting center layouts that met social distancing requirements, and accommodate a greatly expanded vote-by-mail program, as well as a more complicated system of in-person ballots. And
whereas the election workers conducted extensive outreach to residents in multiple languages, monitored the security and collection of ballots from 52 newly installed ballot boxes throughout the county, ensured the performance and security of voting equipment for in-person voting, and processed record numbers of vote-by-mail and provisional ballots. And
whereas the 2020 election faced increased scrutiny regarding the security and canvassing of ballots, as well as new directives from state and local boards of elections. Yet despite these challenges, our dedicated election workers rose to the occasion in implementing a fair, well-run, and secure election while ensuring the health and safety of staff members and voters. And
whereas Montgomery County residents were able to exercise their right and privilege to vote during the pandemic through a variety of means, whether vote by mail, in person at 11 early voting centers, or at 40 election day centers, due to the tenacity, hard work, and commitment of our election workers.
Now therefore be it resolved that the County Council of Montgomery County, Maryland hereby recognizes and honors the Montgomery County election workers of 2020. And be it further resolved that the County Council encourages residents to always honor their right to vote and celebrate the election workers who enabled us to exercise that privilege during a time of heightened political unrest and the COVID-19 pandemic, presented on this 23rd day of February in the year 2021. Thank you so much to our election workers. Congratulations. Mr. President, I turn it back over to you, sir.
Thank you all so much for your contributions. Everything's been said, but I want to extend my gratitude to you as well on behalf of all our voters. Keep up the good work. Thank you very much.